nutrients, and oxygen supply of the primary tumor. The above chain of events occurring at a molecular level is a process that can last for years. At this stage, the size of the primary tumor has not yet reached 1 millimeter and consists of 10,000 cells at most. The genetically defective cells could rapidly divide, but having reached this size, the cell group still has to fight another battle. The nutrient and oxygen supply to cells constituting the primary tumor can no longer be achieved by diffusion as had previously been possible. So the growth of the cell group comes to a halt again. Its further growth can occur only if the blood supply to the cell group is ensured. The lack of it, in some cases, can further delay the formation of a palpable tumor for years. One or more cells can with time, however, direct the growth of capillaries from surrounding tissue into the primary tumor. It is at this phase that the last obstacle on the way of tumor growth is overcome. The nutrient and oxygen supply of the tumor is cared for, and the number of tumor cells begins to multiply explosively. Figure 1.6, Phase IV. We stress again that in healthy persons the counteracting processes are in balance at various levels. Figure 1.6. Genetic defects do occur, but the majority of them are repaired. Oncogenes come into being, but their activity is compensated for by tumor suppressor genes. The increase in the number of genetic defects could lead to the appearance of tumor cells, but the cell starts its own suicidal program, thus freeing the body from genetically impaired cells. The system is efficient enough it manages to constantly keep the number of malignant cells low. This is confirmed by the fact that in examining the prostates of elderly deceased men, researchers have found that in corresponding to their age, a significant number of them, 60 to 70% of the 60 to 70 age group, the presence of tumorous cells could be detected. However, only a very low percent died from prostate cancer because in most cases the process was kept under control by the body. To prevent the appearance or tumorous diseases, our aim should be to maintain a balance in our bodies throughout our lives. This is rather difficult to ensure today as the amount of carcinogens in the environment is constantly increasing. Our life is under constant stress, and a lack of exercise and inappropriate nutrition, and a number of other factors also favor tumor development statistically in our developed society. This is manifested by the increasing number of cancer patients and rising mortality rates. This is also supported by the statistical data indicating that during the past 20 years, among 40 to 49-year-old males, the occurrence of cancer grew 200-fold. A tumor finally appears in the body as an end product or a process which lasts for many years. Each phase of its development is characterized by the quantitative accumulation of genetic defects, some of which assume special significance. Cells of this kind acquire unique potential as opposed to other cells. In fact, the development of a tumor rarely occurs and can be led back to a chain of successive, random events. In the following we wish to demonstrate the causes and the phases or its development. Figure 1.6. Why were our grandfathers able to smoke? People, mostly smokers, often say that smoking is not responsible for tumor growth, and they keep referring to their 80 or 90-year-old grandfathers. Unfortunately, this argument is no longer valid. In the case of our forefathers, the only risk factor was, in fact, smoking, as in those times people lived in a healthy environment and were not subject to the stress of big cities and to polluted air. So their organisms were able to keep a balance despite the existence of tumor cells. Nowadays, when the bulk of the population lives in big cities and many people smoke, harmful effects multiply, and this, in too many cases, is beyond the capacity of the defense system. Consequently, The tumor gets out of control, as we have tried to demonstrate in previous figures. The increase of risk factors is well indicated by the fact that among those who work with the very dangerous material asbestos, the risk of lung cancer is 16 times higher, and if, in addition, the endangered person smokes, this number is 600 times more. What is the direction of cancer therapy today? The present state of the war on cancer can be evaluated from various points of view. One favorable approach is that tumorous diseases should not automatically be looked upon as lethal ones. In some respects, medicine has, over the last decades, been developing at an immense pace, and in the case of certain tumors, tumor of the testicles or childhood leukemia, following appropriate treatment, a significant percentage of patients can be considered cured. Another achievement is when, though not cured, the patient's life can considerably be prolonged, unfortunately often along with a considerable deterioration in the quality of life. In terms or numbers, since 1993, in Hungary alone, 200,000 cancer patients have died. This is as if in 7 years, 4 towns had become extinct. There rises as to how such statistical data can verify the achievements of cancer therapy. We are unable to face the facts and accept that all endeavors up till now, along with the further development of current methods of treatment, will not lead us to solve the problem. Then we will not be able to change the situation and find realistic solutions to the problem. The consequence of being too ready to accept results as positive is that we turn away from possibilities that offer themselves, even though we are badly in need of every new idea. Naturally, this does not mean that every new thought carries with it a real breakthrough, but a chance must be given to every new idea, and thereby to our survival. Before I am accused of making exaggerated statements regarding the present situation, let me quote some paragraphs by Tim Beardsley, writer on the editorial staff for Scientific American. The title of the article, published in the January 1991 issue of the journal, reflects the actual situation. I warn not one. There was so much good news at their meeting in September that the members of the President's Cancer Panel might have been pardoned had they been overwhelmed by euphoria. Reports of promising therapies and diagnostic maneuvers swirled with accounts of deep new insights into the underlying genetics and molecular biology of the disease. Then the mood grew somber, or was it tense? John C. Baylor, a noted professor of epidemiology and biostatistics at McGill University, began his observations on recent trends in the morbidity and mortality of cancer. Baylor had created a storm in 1986, for publishing a damning lack of progress report on the war on cancer initiated by the President Richard M. Nixon when the chief executive signed the National Cancer Act in 1971. Baylor's unflinching summary of the latest body counts last fall, part of a formal evaluation of the National Cancer Program, led to the same disturbing result. In the end, any claim of major success against cancer must be reconciled with this figure, he said, pointing to a simple graph that showed a stark continuing increase in U.S. death rates from cancer between 1950 and 1990. I do not think such reconciliation is possible, and again conclude, as I did 7 years ago, that our decades of war against cancer have been a qualified failure. The numbers based on data supplied by the National Cancer Institute (NCI) indeed present a grim picture. Baylor's principal conclusion, with which the NCI agrees, is that U.S. cancer death rates went up by 7% between 1975 and 1990. This number, like all those Baylor cited, has been adjusted to compensate for the changing size and composition of the population with respect to age. So the increase cannot be blamed on people's dying less often from other diseases. Cancer is the second leading cause of death in the U.S. after heart disease. 526,000 cancer deaths were expected to have occurred in the U.S. in 1993. What do these facts mean? Would analysis of them reveal environmental or other influences that are triggering the disease? Do the results justify the massive, frontal assault, which relies on research into the fundamental causes, on efforts to devise sensitive diagnostic procedures, and on empirical attempts to develop cures? Have the researchers and clinicians been barking up the wrong trees for the past 2 decades? Thus, the war against cancer is one in which the foe's order of battle changes constantly. Death rates have declined for such cancers as those of the colon and rectum, stomach, uterus, including the cervix, bladder, cranium, bone, gallbladder, and testis. Death rates from cancer in children fell by almost half between 1973 and 1989, in large part because of better treatments. Yet because cancer in children was rare to begin with, this improvement and smaller gains in young adults has had only a minuscule effect on the big picture. Overall, the increases in cancer death rate are twice as large as the decreases. In principle, death rates should reflect both improvements in treatment and changes in incidence. Unfortunately, colorectal cancer is only one of the big 4 killers: lung, colorectal, breast, and prostate that is becoming more curable. By a cruel twist of fate, the other cancers that can now be cured somewhat more successfully than in 1973 are relatively rare. They are Hodgkin's disease, some leukemias, cancer of the thyroid, testicular cancer, and, perhaps, cancers of the uterus and bladder. A completely different way to look at progress in the war against cancer is to examine what proportion of people diagnosed with different types survive for at least 5 years. Although 5-year survival rates say nothing about incidence, they are seen as highly relevant by the people diagnosed as having cancer. Unfortunately, the comfort that these data offer is distinctly cold. Despite the heartening gains in cure rates in the young, the NCI estimates the overall improvement in 5-year survival since Nixon launched the program is only 4%. Baylor told the president's cancer panel that even that figure may constitute an overestimate. Optimists, such as Greenwald, feel that large-scale improvements in death rates and incidence rates will eventually result from the years of investment in basic cancer research, although Greenwald guesses it may be a decade before the benefits are widely felt. Gene therapy, immunotherapy, and antisense RNA technology are just a few of the methods now in early testing. Such subcellular interventions could, according to their proponents, bring about dramatic gains by changing the activity of specific genes in tumors and selectively modifying the immune response. But skeptics, including Baylor, say they have heard that kind of talk too many times before. No knowledgeable person can continue to believe there is necessarily a spectrum of marvelous cures of cancer waiting to be found, he asserts. Baylor says he is fed up with the constant procession of hopeful new stories suggesting a cure is just around the corner. Existing chemotherapies, despite improvements, are still arduous. Oncologists who employ them know they are wielding double-edged swords. Some of the treatments for lymphoma and leukemia trigger other cancers after therapy for the primary disease has been successfully completed. If there has been a change, it is that we must shed our illusions that cancer is an easy problem. It is a formidable problem. Baylor is among those who believe the NCI should devote much more of its money to prevention. We've come to the point where we must face a really serious problem square in the face. What if there aren't any major advances to be obtained in chemotherapy? He demands. For a lot of years now, we've been tinkering. It's not going to solve the big problem of cancer, and we need a major advance. Prevention is going to involve everybody over their whole lives, he declares. It's going to involve cleaning up the workplace and the environment. It's going to involve changing our diets, and it's certainly going to be a bigger hassle and more expensive than our ideal treatments would be. The NCI is already nominally devoting more of its budget to prevention research than to treatment research. Scientific American, January 1994. This is how the state of cancer therapy is looked upon in one of the richest countries of the world. The most important message of the article is the change of attitude, which, admitting the failure of present-day cancer treatment, focuses on prevention, hoping to find the way out in a therapeutic approach utterly different from those applied until now.